It's the riddle of riddles, the secret of secrets. It's the charmed mirror which will transport us to another world, a different dimension. 200 centuries ago, there was a civilization whose people already knew how to draw. The professor moaned like someone thrashing in hell. Sweat covered his forehead and his whole body trembled. And by the light of the torches, we saw a depiction of the weirdest saga ever drawn by a human. Do you see, as I do, the flying, conjoined men? Men running towards mysterious cylindrical bodies, and men wearing shiny helmets and white robes. Stout blonde women flying as small black humans stare at them in surprise. And this, a head with 2 antennae. The light danced over the drawings, which appeared to move. Actually, they are moving. And look here. Up a bit. Higher. A little to the right. Yes, here it is. Some kind of men with flippers as feet. Don't you see it? Someone with a fevered imagination had stood here 200 centuries ago, pouring all of his mad secrets into these stone walls. What genius, at the dawn of history, decided to abandon the spear for drawing? And for what purpose? These drawings are incredibly gorgeous, but in my opinion, they do not hold the secrets of the universe any more than a wildly imaginative child scribbling in the margins of his notebook. Trying not to spoil the atmosphere of foreboding, Mahmoud whispered in my ear, "What do you think?" Making sure the professor would not hear my disinterested tone, I replied, "Genius." I'm not talking about the quality of the drawings. I'm talking about their meaning. You want a meaning for something meaningless? I retorted. This whole thing represents nothing more than a caveman who knows how to draw. You still insist? Of course. At that moment, the professor brought out his flash camera and began taking scores of photos of these wall drawings. Around 5,000 small drawings he tried to capture in 2 or 3 rolls of film. And, quite deviously, I noticed he had forgotten to remove the cap from the lens, which really cheered me up in a brutal sort of way. I would not draw his attention to that, especially as he had finished 3 rolls of film before I noticed. But after some minutes, I felt my conscience pricking me and so pointed at the lens politely. He swore in Italian and started refilling the camera with new film and capturing the scenes once again. After an hour of this, the boredom was killing me. I glanced at the taboo men and found them standing as silent as the rocks, disinterest showing on their faces. For them, the situation was nothing more than a routine job they had performed many times before, and like me, they saw nothing amazing about these drawings except that they brought crazy scientists paying the highest price. And now, we leave that boring cave only to enter another one, and leave this boring cave for another, even more boring one. I can't take this anymore. These repetitive scenes bleed together in my mind. They're all the same, and none of it interests me. Yet the professor grows ever more crazed, and the taboo men more and more disinterested. Ahmed seems worn out. And finally, we finish with most of them and reach the small cave no one had entered before, the cave with its entrance blocked by 2 boulders. The professor led the way, inspecting the 2 boulders. He looked at the men questioningly, as if asking for their help. "No," Karim said this firmly, leaving no space for any more insistence or requests. A strong reason prevented them from leaving us, or assisting us in moving these rocks. "But this is the cave," the professor pleaded. "No." "But I paid you to—" "No," Karim said again as he stepped back, announcing the end of the day's exploration, and we could only follow him, swallowing our questions. The night had fallen, and visibility had decreased. All of existence seemed to be covered in a mysterious blue as we sat by the fire, eating bread and dates and drinking skim milk. I had taken off my shoes, and my toes spasmed painfully as if the blood inside would tear them apart. The swelling grew worse. The professor, on the other hand, kept his shoes on and did not eat, but his blue eyes shone by the light of the flame, driven by a crazy idea which cornered him. Someone brought out a strange, stringed instrument, like some kind of violin with only 1 string. One of the men started playing it. I whispered in Mahmoud's ear, "Even these men play music?" Sure, why not? They are human, right? I mean, in all your travels, have you ever met any people who don't play and sing when they gather around a fire at night? And this instrument, I asked. It's very similar to one played in the Egyptian countryside. It's called Al-Amzad, and you will hear wonders from it. And truly, the man sang with a lovely voice in an unfamiliar accent. It was a sad song which surely spoke of solitude, lost love, and a cruel girl once loved. It spoke of the desert and about the family home, or about anything sad which speaks to your heart but for which you lack courage to mention even to yourself. And 2 tears fell on my cheeks as I listened to this song played on a makeshift violin in this desert. And between my tears, I felt the professor leaning against me, ruining everything. "The 2 rocks," he said. "Which rocks?" "The 2 rocks at the cave's entrance. They weren't caused by an avalanche. They were placed there by someone intentionally to block the entrance." "And why would someone do that?" "There's something they don't want us to see," he insisted, "or something they want to keep inside. So we must know what that thing is." His face constricted with insistence. "We have to enter that cave tonight." "7. The Unentered Cave." When the men slept, I covered myself with the woolen blanket they provided and curled up next to the fire. The cruel desert cold pierced like a dagger. It must have been 1 a.m. when I felt the professor shaking me roughly, and by the light of the 3/4 moon, I noticed his anxious expression. I almost spoke, but he covered my mouth with his hand, whispering, "Shh! I'm going with Mahmoud and Ahmed to see the cave. Do you want to come with us?" "We won't force you." With sleep still weighing down my eyelids, I whispered back, "Why not wait until the morning?" "Because the men will prevent us." In a matter of moments, I reevaluated the situation. There will be 3 of us, actually 4, and it'll only take a few minutes because the cave is nearby, and like the rest of the caves, it's shallow, so why not go? At least I'll satisfy my curiosity and dispel the reputation for cowardice with which the Italian had labeled me. Plus, there is a guilty pleasure in discovering hidden places, a deep-rooted pleasure within the human psyche since the dawn of human history. Do you remember the story of Bluebeard, the one who gifted his wife a mansion of 99 rooms for her to move around in as she pleases? He did, however, forbid her from entering the 100th room. Thus, she became obsessed with entering the 100th room, and despite his warning, she entered it. And what did she find? And what did she see? It's the human fascination with the unknown, a fascination never satiated. So, like you expect, I stuck my feet, still swollen from sleep, in my shoes, and rose lightly to go with them to the final cave. In front of the cave we stood. The entrance was blocked by the 2 rocks, above which we saw some kind of inscription in a foreign script. By the light of the flashlight, we inspected it with curiosity. Breathing hard with excitement, the professor pronounced, "It's the Tuareg alphabet. Its letters derived from the Cartesian language." "Okay, and what does it mean?" "I don't know," he answered, "but it's a warning for anyone who enters, of course." He then gestured for us to help move one of the rocks, and the 4 of us joined forces in this effort. More effort. Our bottom lips bled from the force of our teeth, our backs strained, and our veins nearly exploded. I felt the leaking of the capillaries in my eyes. My biceps strained, and heave ho, heave ho. The rock had budged. "Don't give up, guys. Come on, Ahmed. You act like you're trying, but you're shifting the weight towards me." Heave ho. "This is impossible. We'll never make it. I'll get a slipped disc. We've done it. Finally." At last, the rock tilted to one side, making enough room for us to climb over and enter the cave. "Well then, let's go." "Just a second," said Mahmoud as he tossed a rock into the cave. He had remembered to be cautious. We waited for a minute and then climbed past the rock into the cave. We had to turn on our flashlights against the pitch darkness. A rotten stench filled the place. Stalactites dangled from the roof of the cave, like a mythical monster's fangs closing down on us. I tried to push away such a notion from my imagination. The walls were formed of regular rock devoid of drawings, just boring rocks in a narrow, smelly cave. And, of course, the professor was terribly disappointed. His face revealed his sulking, as if he had expected to find the secret of life in a golden box inside this cave. Our flashlights moved slowly over the walls, looking for anything, but with no luck. The ancient artist had forgotten to make his mark on this cave, or maybe he grew bored of the whole thing. Suddenly, Mahmoud spoke nervously. "Shh! Did you hear that?" He froze for a few seconds before his muscles relaxed, and he whispered, "Nothing." We continued our tour through the darkness. Strange. I could swear I heard a strange sound as well, but I'm aware that shared delusion is a real thing, and anticipation can be very powerful. "Look!" the professor shouted eagerly, pointing at something in one of the corners. We rushed over to him as he aimed at the ground with a shaky finger. A hole, and by the shaky light of our flashlights, we could discern a well-crafted staircase leading downward. And without another word, the professor tested the steps gingerly with his foot and descended into the hole while moving his flashlight up and down. From the opening, I peered down and yelled in a shaky voice, "Professor, what are you doing?" Annoyed, he shouted back, "What kind of question is that?" "This is not the time," I shouted. "We don't have ropes or weapons or—" But he did not answer and continued his descent. A disaster was imminent. Yes, I'm sure of it. Just then, Ahmed yelled in terror, "He's been charmed! I'm sure of it! Something is calling him!" The hair on my head stood up from the gravity of this idea, and I gave him a spiteful look, as this was no time for such clever imaginings. Mahmoud, however, seemed to be thinking. His forehead creased as he whispered while kneeling at the edge of the hole, "You know what I think? Where do these stairs lead? And who made them?" "I have no idea." He smiled cunningly, a devilish look shining in his eyes. "What? Is he kidding? This is crazy. Mahmoud, don't tell me you think—" "I don't think, I'm sure," he replied. I swallowed nervously. The idea was horrible, but realistic. Do these stairs, built by a human, lead to the underworld? Do these stairs descend to Atlantis? With a cracked voice, I told him, "But there's no proof." He smoothed his hair and again smiled deviously, saying, "There's more than one proof. The strange drawings any primitive caveman could draw. The rocks blocking the entrance. The taboo men's fear and the legends their family must have told them about people living under the ground. That's why they blocked the only entrance and exit to this world. And gradually, the entrance of this cave became an almost religious taboo." "And that's why they did not allow Brennan or Lot to enter," I murmured. "Exactly," said Mahmoud. I stood from my kneeling position, dusting the dirt from my knees, and said as I lit a cigarette, "We have to keep the professor from going down. We should stay with him. I mean, God only knows what's down there." Mahmoud started preparing to go down, asking, "Do you have your gun?" "Yeah?" "Okay, that's good, as we are unarmed. Should we go?" He started down the stairs, followed by me and then Ahmed. "But shouldn't we leave someone standing guard in the cave chamber while we go down?" "I don't know. I really don't know. But don't blame us, for we had no idea what awaited us on this blasted excursion. We had no idea." We had only descended about 100 steps when the scream rang out, a terrible scream of fright from below. And we were surprised by the professor rushing up the stairs, disregarding us. Not seeing in front of him, he bumped into me and crashed into Ahmed, and then he too fell, landing on one of the stairs and howling like a teenaged girl, his face constricted. He spoke in rapid-fire Italian while Mahmoud stood nearby listening, his face paling. With much worry and dread, I implored him, "Mahmoud, what is he saying?" He did not answer, but went on listening with interest. "Mahmoud, by God, speak!" I said this while lighting another cigarette. A cough crept upwards from my chest as Mahmoud answered, his eyes fixed on the professor. "He's scared." "Oh, thanks for that, genius," I quipped. "I got that without any translation." "And he's saying," Mahmoud went on, "that the thing is coming. He's telling us to run." "And what exactly is the thing?" "I didn't catch it," said Mahmoud. "He's in a bad state, and he's speaking incoherently." He then checked his watch by his flashlight and mumbled, "Anyway, it's almost dawn, and we'd better get back before the men wake up for the prayer and learn of our little mission here." Taking the professor's hand and helping him up, Ahmed commented, "Plus, he's in no shape to go any farther." And so, maybe out of good luck and as a mercy on my nerves, we returned to the main chamber and exited the cave. As best we could, we moved the rock back to roughly where it was before, though the opening was still visible. The moonlight spread over the sands as we returned to the camp, trying to prevent the professor from screaming hysterically. But lucky for us, the taboo men were still sleeping. Those guys really have clear consciences. Taking off our shoes, we lay on the sand and made loud snoring noises, although after 10 minutes there was no need to pretend as we tasted beautiful sleep for real. At 4 a.m. I felt a hand shaking me, trying to wake me to catch the dawn prayer. And by the light of the rising sun, I was surprised to see the terrible state the professor was in. 8. The Mysterious Calling. Throughout the day, the professor spoke incoherently, shouting threatening words in Italian, trying to scare something. What did this man see? And what is this, the thing? His nerves are really broken, but I could find no clear medical reason for it, and I could not assist him. I could only force-feed him food and water along with some sedatives, while increasing my usage of cigarettes astronomically. I didn't like it, but I was nervous, so nervous. The taboo sat gloomily in a circle, regarding us with their sharp, unblinking eyes. These people are strong and honest, but I swear they have no empathy or concern for us at all. I have to get away from all of this. I never want to see sands again, nor taboo, nor crazy college professors. But there's no way around it. The train to Cairo, unfortunately, does not pass anywhere near the Tassili Plateau. Along with 2 of his men, Karim came and stood in front of me for a moment. He then sat cross-legged on the sand, looking at me quickly. I smiled in embarrassment. "Cigarette?" I asked in a friendly way while offering him the pack. He continued staring at me with his penetrating, sharp eyes. Very annoying, really. I don't remember if I knew at that time of Sartre saying, "Hell is other people," but that's exactly how I felt. I heard Karim asking calmly, "Did you enter that cave last night?" "I said," he repeated, "did you enter the cave last night?" What do I say? Should I lie? He certainly had something making him doubt us, and what did we miss in our escape at dawn today? Our footprints, or the rock out of place, or... Then it's wise not to assume these people are idiots. Yes, we went in. Silence prevailed for a few seconds, and a fateful surrender showed in the men's eyes. Then, while taking the cigarette from me and bringing down the cover from his mouth, Karim said, "We knew it," and he gestured for me to follow them. We walked silently over the rocks to the cave we had escaped at dawn, and there at the entrance we looked at the ground. No doubt about it, our footprints showed clearly. But stranger and more worrisome still were the other footprints, much bigger and deeper than ours. They were footprints of clawed feet, greedily penetrating the earth. They tracked off for a distance before dissolving into the sands, and so were impossible to follow. Lifting my eyes in questioning, I saw the looks in the eyes of the men and felt goosebumps run up my spine. With some annoyance, Karim asked, "And what do you say now?" "About what?" He blew out smoke and then sat cross-legged on a rock, resting his rifle on his knees, saying, "The Assas has awoken." "The Assas?" "Yes, said Karim. "The cave guard whom no creature has disturbed for 200 centuries. Our fathers and grandfathers warned us about it. And beware to he who dares. Yet here you've dared." He spoke without anger, and it would not be an exaggeration to say that his manner gave away some kindness, as if what would happen to us was enough with no need for extra misery. Curious, I asked, "And where did this assas come from?" He pointed downwards, meaning from under the earth, so I asked, "Who lived down there?" He shook his head and went on smoking, so I asked, "So you don't know? No one knows. You only see the drawings on the cave walls, right?" Snuffing out his cigarette, he threw it afar and simply nodded in the affirmative. He then picked up his rifle and stood wearily. But before leaving, he did not neglect to tell us, "You're going to die, and us along with you, possibly. That is what our ancestors said." I have to light the fuse, but where is my lighter? No wolf breaks its victim's neck and twists it in the opposite direction. And beware to he who dares. Yet here you've dared. The sun was sinking in the west before the professor's status started to improve. Mahmoud sat cross-legged next to him, dabbing his forehead intermittently for no apparent reason, as he had no fever but for his fevered desire to do something. The professor lifted his head and then sat up cross-legged. Kneeling next to him, I congratulated him on his survival, but his reaction surprised me. He threw a cruel look at me, turning to ask Mahmoud, "What is that madman saying?" "What?" Had the professor lost his memory? Surely not, as he was not of the type with clear conscience, nor one who forgets. I asked him discreetly, "Professor, at dawn you had a terrible experience, right?" His anger flared, and he shouted at Mahmoud, saliva spraying from his mouth, "Aren't you going to keep this idiot away from me?" We did our best to calm him down and then began interrogating him calmly. He actually remembered everything, his descending into the pit, all that he had done, but he could not remember that something specific aroused his fear. "Maybe it's claustrophobia, or of being underground," the professor suggested, trying to find a logical explanation for his panic at dawn today. "Yes, that must be it. It played with my mind and paralyzed my thinking." I exchanged doubtful looks with Mahmoud. The fear of being underground does not come on suddenly, and does not cause a state of continuous hallucinations lasting a whole day, not to mention that those given to such fear don't usually speak of the thing they have seen. They are actually acutely aware that their fear has no basis. And as for the state of selective amnesia in which a patient forgets something specific but nothing else, he is either honest or a liar. But what was he lying about? Was he lying about seeing the thing, or lying about not seeing it? Or lying about both? This crazy professor never ceased to amaze me and frustrate me. And now, night crawls along the bleak desert sands, poking its nose into our story. Once again, the taboo men light the fire and sit around it, but this time without singing, without conversing, just gloominess and silence. Having explained the danger to all involved, Karim said in a foreboding voice, "We have to leave tomorrow." Having regained his usual annoying nature, the professor protested, "But we haven't finished yet, and—" "We leave tomorrow," Karim said again as he stoked the fire with the tip of his dagger. "And as for tonight, someone has to stand guard. We'll organize shifts for that purpose. No one knows what could happen, so I advise you all to be very careful." He then aimed at me, suggesting I would be the first, then Ahmed, and after that one of the taboo men, then Mahmoud, then one of them. At first I couldn't understand the wisdom in organizing the shifts like this, but I later realized that they had chosen the most prone to boredom, me, I'm not ashamed to say, to take the easy first hours of the night. Then came the role of the strongest among them. It seemed to me that this system was a mistake. My 3-hour shift passed peacefully, except for my black notions which moved across the desert sands, notions which I think contributed to my white hair. But one happy notion occurred to me, dispelling my tension. I imagined my late mom being able to see me now. Think of it, a mother imagining her son standing guard next to a campfire in South Libya, guarding a caravan of Tawarik against a legendary monster. She could never conjure it, even if her imagination were as wide as the ocean itself. I'm a very weird person. Very weird. My shift had ended, so I woke Ahmed to stand guard, and I curled up next to the fire like a big cat, awaiting the happy moment when sleep would knock at my door and place its magical cape over me. But such a wanted guest did not come. With half-open eyes, I looked over at Ahmed as he sat next to the fire, absent-minded, his eyes looking out into the unknown. His eyes were wondrous, the fire casting its shadows over his features. At the time, I had no idea. How could I? What kind of magnetic effect had pierced his soul destructively? He was absent from this world, deep within the non-existent sea waves, and the waves rose higher and higher. For a whole hour I would intermittently pass out and then wake up to find him still sitting in the same position, absent-minded. I began sensing that something was wrong. Putting my glasses on, I thought, this guy hasn't changed positions for a whole hour. And the look, his frozen look is very suspicious. I'd better get up and see what's wrong with him. But, wait, he himself is getting up. Slowly he rose to his feet and walked away from the fire, outside the circle of light. Where is he going? Maybe to urinate? But no. I better follow him and call out to him. But no. His fixed gait and frozen face suggest to me that he is sleepwalking, and it's dangerous to try to wake him. I'll leave it to happen naturally. He moved in an abnormally smooth way in the dark. As for me, I tripped and stumbled, cursed quietly, and hurried along behind him. Ahmed, where are you going, you fool? What a madman. You'll fall into one of these pits and break your face. Short of breath, I grumbled from between my teeth as he advanced far from the distant light of the fire as I followed behind. And the desert stretched out endlessly before us. Just then, I heard the wolf howling in the distance, deep, bleak, full of impending doom. A lone wolf. And I stopped. I had to be smart. I would go back and wake up the men who would help me look for the crazy guy before the wolves shredded him. I could not help him if the wolves mangled me along with him. So I ran back to the camp and roused Mahmoud and Karim. In confused sentences, I told them what was happening. My tension and breathlessness proved clearly the gravity of what I had seen. They rose in a hurry, and some of the other men woke from the commotion. And by the light of our torches, we tracked the clear footprints in the sand and called out, "Ahmed! Ahmed!" only to be answered by hundreds of ghostly echoes. Then suddenly the footprints disappeared. They vanished in a chaotic pattern of uprooted cacti and additional footprints. Nearby, we observed a dark, bottomless pit. Trying not to add to our fear, Karim said calmly, "I think it's clear what has happened." And he looked away from our fearful eyes and continued, "In the morning, we'll descend into this pit to search for him." But we knew it was over, and nothing more could be said. 9. 3. As we reached the camp, we saw the professor returning from afar. As soon as he saw us, he shouted anxiously, "Did you find him?" But our gloomy faces gave him our wordless answer. Surprised, Mahmoud demanded, "Where did you go?" "I went looking for him in the other direction," said the professor. "Maybe he got by us without us noticing." "But you were asleep when we got up to look for him." "Old people never sleep deeply, son," the professor said. "We never sleep easy." And so, we return to chapter 1 of this story, where it all began. You will fall into the same trap which I myself fell into, pulling you downwards in the midst of the desert, no shelter and no escape. Do you remember what happened? Searching for Ahmed, finding his torn jacket and the clawed footprints in the sand, and the men realizing it could mean only one thing: the Assas had moved. Then searching for and finding his corpse, his death not explained by the wolves, and the argument between the Tawarik and the professor. and my insistence on leaving, and then changing my mind. Then the feeling of foreboding, and the fire extinguishing, and the sounds of the terrible screams, and... Do you remember all that? Well then, come, let's continue the events of this nightmarish story. I felt it, as did the camel beneath me. Looking around, I found nothing. By the cold light of the moon, I could make out no danger, but it was there. It was inside me. I knew it was following me and drawing closer, but I found no trace around me. Is it invisible? No, and it's not an illusion. It's real. It's real, but beyond my ability to sense. I dug my heels into the back of the camel, spurring it on. Hurry! Hurry! But the animal needed no prompting, as it knew the danger and understood it, and feared it, maybe more than I. It ran over the sands, rushing, rushing. But suddenly, the animal tensed up and stopped, and by the pale moonlight I saw someone standing in front of me, blocking the way. It was Mahmoud. I knew him by his frizzy hair before even seeing his face. He was trembling, his face showing signs of terror. He stood breathless. Mahmoud! What happened? Why did you return, you idiot? I couldn't bear it, I answered. But, can you make my camel sit? Okay, well, do so. I want to feel my feet on solid ground. He quickly helped me dismount, and as the camel took a sitting position, Mahmoud began trembling and repeating, He's crazy! That professor is crazy! What else is new? I quipped as I lit up a cigarette and listened intently to his story. He told me that when we left, the professor went quite mad and stomped out the fire tensely. He kicked and scattered the supplies and then ran off into the desert, screaming as if being pulled by his tongue. So that explains the screams and the fire going out. Yes, Mahmoud explained, and I ran after him, faster than I've ever run in my life. But he disappeared into the desert as if possessed by a demon. I really don't get it. I smiled confidently, blowing out smoke and tossing my cigarette. On the contrary, I said, it's quite clear now. What do you mean? Sitting down next to the camel, I petted his rough skin and explained, the matter is quite clear. The man has gone completely mad. So now, try to remember all that he said and did throughout this trip. First, he suffered delusions of grandeur, fancying that his theory was an unchangeable destiny. Secondly, I went on, he has fascist tendencies, and surely neither of us can forget what he did when he saw the wreckage of the Italian plane. Thirdly, he's the one who went down the stairs, and he's the one who screamed, hallucinating about the thing, though we saw nothing worrisome. Fourthly, you, and really all of us, noticed that he did not accompany us in searching for Ahmed. So where was he? With some confusion, Mahmoud replied, He was asleep, but woke to our talking and went searching in the other direction. That's what he said. But how is that logical? An old man wakes up at night only to find his companions went in one direction, so why would he go looking in the other direction? I mean, then what? He walks alone in the dark desert, without a weapon, not afraid of the wolves, or something worse. Maybe he was charmed or sleepwalking, like what happened to Ahmed. Well then, how did he sober up? I said, the reality is, I'm pretty sure this man is playing us. He knows of the legend of the assass and is trying to make it real, literally. But why? Mahmoud asked. Sighing wearily, I said, I've met a lot of people of his type, trying carefully to prove legends. A girl trying to revive the story of the werewolf, motivated by revenge. A doctor kidnapping men, turning them into human lab rats. A doctor making a cover story for his smuggling. A killer contributing his crimes to Greek mythology. Lots of reasons, but I think this man is simply crazy. Well then, Mahmoud suggested, he killed Ahmed? I think so, while I was returning to wake you guys up. But how did he mutilate the body? Mahmoud asked. The sheep feels no pain from the shearing after being slaughtered, I answered. He drained his blood somehow, but he made a mistake in twisting the neck in the opposite direction. This method reminds me more of medieval European methods rather than an Arabic legend. A European mind is behind this. Well, where is he now? Plotting another heinous death. For us, of course, I said. So we have to find him immediately. And in spite of the look of protest in Mahmoud's eyes, I rubbed my neck and lit up another cigarette. Honestly, I said, the insinuation was strong. Too strong. Even I myself felt the thing as a tangible reality stalking me. I almost died of fear. It made for quite the ominous atmosphere, stirring the imagination. And so we went searching, separately, each one of us carrying a gun. We had lit a fire near the camel so that we could return to our point of origin. In silence, I roamed my area, carrying my gun and led by the moonlight. My eyes were alert, scanning the area desperately. My throat was as dry as a discarded bottle of glue. My only comfort came from my shadow falling in front of me and not behind me. In this way, I would notice this crazy man if he attacked from behind. I remembered everything. His blue eyes, his screaming, his neurosis, and I felt such strong hatred for him. I don't like being fooled. I'm fed up with all these lunatics who find me easy prey to manipulate and convince of the impossible. Rifat! Mahmoud's voice echoed through the silent desert. I startled. Dr. Rifat! The sound is coming from that direction, so let's hurry. And there, in an empty stretch of sand, I found Mahmoud standing, his long, heinous shadow thrown on the sand. He stood with bowed head, and at his feet was something resembling a pile of raggedy clothes. But, though I wished it to be so, it was not that. It was the body of the professor, mangled, his neck twisted backward, eyes bulging. And when I looked at the sand, I saw what I feared. The clawed footprints we now know well. We were wrong, I told Mahmoud bitterly, and with a shaky hand I lit up another cigarette. My lungs felt like stone. I was suffocating. Mahmoud said nothing, so I went on. We discovered the truth, but too late. Mahmoud, say something. His face was covered in darkness, his features mysterious and obscured. For a moment, terror crept into my soul, but finally he spoke. He spoke, but his words only made things worse, as his voice came out throaty, broken, totally meaningless. And then he started laughing wildly. His nerves were broken, and his laughter sounded like a car radiator in the moments before it blows up. This is the problem with others. They're always stronger and more resilient than I am until, suddenly, they break down completely, while I maintain my steadiness until the last moment. The one who starts a race at full speed does not last. Here is Mahmoud laughing, and laughing, his hair flying about his face. He claps his hands together wildly, exclaiming, "The fascist pig is dead! That crazy bastard is dead!" Tossing his gun aside, he clutched his abdomen as he literally bent over in laughter. And here a vague idea invaded my mind. It started out vague, but soon became more clear. And now here it is, as bright as the sun. What if it was Mahmoud who played this trick? The professor was crazy, and you wanted to punish him for the Italians' crimes against your people in Fezzan, and so you concocted a careful plan and pinned the crime on the assassin. You had ample time to kill him and mangle his body when I left you alone in the desert. We went looking for him, so you called me and acted crazy. And maybe you aren't pretending. You really are crazy. And afterwards, there is a new victim for the cave guard, the skinny Egyptian doctor named Rifat Ismail, and the Tawarik find the lone survivor of this massacre and believe only one explanation. The idea was mixed up and tangled, but my imagination would not let it go. I have to get away. I have to. But he'll chase me down, of course, and I won't be able to tie him up or kill him. The only way is to take him with me until I meet up with one of the caravans. And when we reach safety, it will be easy to discover the truth. I'm a soldier. I was following orders. His fit of laughter had ended, and Mahmoud regarded me carefully, and when he saw the strange look in my eyes, he must have understood. Trying to sound fierce, I commanded, "Now, walk in front of me and don't give me that innocent act. Because I'm crazy, and you know what that means." And I aimed my gun between his eyes. 10. 2. Looking at me coldly, Mahmoud said, "I should have known, Rifat. Your hatred of the professor exceeded my expectations. Hatred wasn't a good enough reason to kill." I smiled sarcastically and gripped the handle of my gun nervously, saying, "And what else?" With a sarcastic smile, he replied, "I started doubting you when I noticed your bloodthirsty way of facing those wolves. I said to myself, 'Self, this man is hiding his raging sadism.' And then I noticed your crazy chain smoking. No sane person smokes that much. And not only that," he went on, "you were also the last one to see Ahmed alive, and maybe your going and coming back gave you a lucky chance to be alone with the professor." Trying to look intimidating, I smiled cruelly, saying, "You've got it all wrong. And maybe I'm wrong too, but I can't take any chances. You will be my prisoner until we find the others and learn the truth. And I won't say it again. I am totally crazy." Moments passed tensely as we glared at each other with hostility. The game of suspicion had started, but I had the upper hand, and would not let it go. True, I knew there was a strong possibility that I could be wrong, but what would you do if you were in my shoes? Threaten him? Well, I did exactly that. It's easy to keep a sacred flame of doubt alive in one's heart, even if it takes all night. But your eyelids grow heavy after all this emotional chaos, and your body begins to relax. But you won't sleep. You won't sleep. If I slept, it might be the last time. Spending the night with someone who wants to kill you is not an easy thing, even if you're the one holding the gun. That bastard had curled up on the sand, enjoying a comfortable sleep just to spite me. He had nothing to lose. He was at my mercy and so could sleep in peace. And I remembered bitterly the sarcastic quote by Bernard Shaw, "The most anxious man in a prison is the governor." I won't sleep. I won't. Maggie, my dear angel, what are you doing in Inverness-shire at this moment? And what is Hueda doing? My sister Raifa and my mother, and Tabitha. Azad has the face of a cannibal, but he is talented like Mukhtar. Omar Mukhtar is challenging General Graziani, and Graziani left behind a sign reading, "We did not lack courage, but luck." Chess doesn't depend on luck, but vampires don't exist. Who mentioned vampires? What is going on? I don't remember, but this doctorate thesis has really worn me out. But I won't sleep. I won't. When the Assas comes for my brother Rita, there were no other planets, and I won't sleep. I won't sleep. I won't. The sun is burning me, reflecting millions of crystalline spots of light behind my eyelids. It's noon. I slept. Despite my fight to stay awake, physiology won over my love of life, and now I'm surprised to still be alive. Mahmoud escaped, of course, but I still have my gun. He avoided trying to take it from my hand so as not to awaken me. And, of course, he took back his own gun and camel. I guess he is an honest killer. I mean, he did leave me half of everything, and he could have done otherwise. So either he is falsely accused or is delaying my murder according to his own timing. I know he's nearby and waiting, but where? If I was normal, I would have ridden my camel through the desert looking for a way out. But whoever told you I was normal? Unfortunately, I can't make this damn dinosaur stand up, which means I'm finished. But I'm still not going to panic, as my reality of being lost in the desert hasn't yet sunk in. I know it's true, but I'm not accepting it. And maybe I myself am on the verge of madness. Who knows? Maybe it's for the best. I walked a lot, but found no track to lead me out of this bind. I've been going in continuous circles since leaving the professor that night, unsure of my direction. Thus, I might be currently at the border of Algeria or at the border of Egypt, but I'll never know. And the Tassili Plateau, has it evaporated completely? Every time I return to my dear camel to take some sips of water, my camel roams around, chewing an occasional cactus with his thick lips. I'm really in a bind, and even worse, I'm finally starting to realize it. At last, I found one of the taboo's campsites. Actually, the campsite I spent last night guarding. Wait, last night? No, the night before last. The fire is out, and the remains of the battle the professor waged in his delirium are scattered around. The caves are nearby, but in which direction? I inspected the sands, looking for something I may have forgotten, or really anything which might be useful. And indeed, I found the professor's compass, 2 maps, a pencil, 2 pieces of candy, and 2 sticks of dynamite. Opening the map, I noticed something important. With insight from the taboo men, the professor had drawn red lines marking the paths of their desert convoys, which means their nearest possible location is about 5 kilometers north. A valuable piece of information, maybe worth my life itself. Only problem is, if I reach that path, I'll have to wait God knows how long before one of their convoys pass by. It's not a scheduled train or bus. I may survive today, or maybe a week, or maybe a month, or I may not survive at all. But I can't stay here forever. I have to do something. Anything. Retracing my own footprints in the sand, I went back to my camel. I pulled at its reins, and it actually obeyed me. I led it to the campsite and from there northward. I had no alternative but to walk in front of it instead of riding. We trudged along slowly but steadily. 2 hours had passed, and the dreadful blue color, the color of fear, crawled across the sands. Night would be upon us within the hour, and with it, thousands of terrible possibilities, and it would be a very long night. But suddenly, the camel froze in its tracks. It raised its voice, a deep, long bellow as drool dropped from its mouth. The desert stretched out naked in front of me, swimming in a sea of silver. And in the distance, I saw another camel walking alone, looking for cacti. I know that camel, and its presence here can only mean Mahmoud is nearby and that both of us are walking in the right direction, towards the taboo convoy's path. You had it all wrong, and maybe I did too, but I can't take any chances. On the moonlit sands, I found him, and of course he wasn't standing up, nor even amongst the living. He was dead, killed in the same hellish way, and next to him the same familiar clawed footprints, another heinous scene carved into my memory. Once again I realized I had wronged an innocent man, but much too late. The poor man was scared of me, even though I was also in fear of him. And after a while he escaped from me only to catch up with his destiny. And the Assas was there, and the Assas which I now realized was definitely real. The Assas which had existed for centuries, guarding the Tassili caves against anyone who might try to descend and discover what lay beneath. But discover what exactly? I don't know. And I won't know because I'm next on the list. I'm awaiting my turn outside the executioner's door until such time as he finishes with whoever preceded me. And he had finished and was calling for me to enter. The Assas is here, the entity which drowned us in a sea of mutual doubts and accusations, compelling each of us to stray off alone and meet his punishment. Only the Tawarik, with their instinctive wisdom, knew this and avoided the danger. And when they return, they will find only 3 mangled corpses and a new legend to tell their children by the fire at night. Who knows? Maybe I would be lucky and be immortalized in a beautiful, heroic song to be played on the homemade violin for generations to come. What would the lyrics of this song be? It should say, "We have warned the fools, but they believed not a word, and so the guard had the upper hand, and the sands drank their blood," or something like that. I really liked the idea of this song. I started composing a melody for it, snapping my fingers and humming along and dancing in the moonlight. I've gone completely mad. I know that, and I enjoy it. Bavarians call the mentally ill Monzolknish, meaning roughly lunatic. Yes, I've become a lunatic, a lunatic. We have warned the fools, and the sands drank their blood. Tra-la-la-la-la. 11:1. And now comes the moment of truth. No more joking around. I don't have the luxury of hysteria. I have to organize my thoughts. Okay, I know I have 2 sticks of dynamite in my pack, as well as a lighter and my gun. True, it's not enough, but it's a start. I have 2 camels, and since I can't ride either of them, I'll make use of them like a scientist uses a Geiger counter. These animals are very sensitive, unfailing in their instincts. So when the hair on its neck stands up, I'll know something is coming my direction. Something unfriendly, of course. The wolves howled, but I had no time for trivial fears. I would not waste a single bullet on the beasts. But the terrible truth plagued my mind. The wolves howled in the distance, but dared not come closer. Even those beasts know the truth. I'm out of cigarettes. I've survived lung cancer. I was carrying 3 canteens of water, one belonging to the professor, and another to Mahmoud, and my own, may God prolong my life. Drinking from the last canteen, I had a strange thought. Didn't we have more water than this? Oh well, thirst won't be a problem after today. That's weird, Dr. Rifat. You told me you are interested in the secrets of the paranormal. Whoosh! Get out of here, you son of a devil! Leave him. And time dragged on. Hysteria crept slowly through my mind, and I found amusement in imagining myself hosting a ladies' radio show. Madam, today I bring you a cheap, effective recipe for dispelling a vicious cave guard. I can't describe the thing to you, but rest assured, you can defeat it by using 2 sticks of dynamite. You wait until it draws closer and then light the fuse and throw it at it. And then you take cover. Now, don't forget, madam, to take cover, and you'll survive. Survive? Yes, so we can bring you back in another episode featuring another beast. With a steady, wise gaze, the camel stared at me as I gradually went mad. How smart are these animals? But I'm not finished yet. I still have intact those shattered nerves. So tired. And now it's midnight, and the moment has come. Here it is, coming for me. I can see it clearly in the moonlight. I ignore the panicking of the 2 camels and the howling of the wolves, and my pounding heart. Should I describe it to you? Well, it is your right, but I simply can't. I imagine it like some kind of huge gorilla or wolf, or something resembling the Incredible Hulk, something we knew nothing of back then. Actually, I can even imagine it like a hologram or a mass of flame, or an unseen ghostly entity. But no, you're wrong. The assas does not resemble any self-respecting monster. It's something beyond my ability to describe. True, it is a tangible entity, but it looks nothing like any scary thing you can imagine. It's the monster that has yet to be invented. And so, I really can't describe it any better. Simply, it's just heinous, angry, and it wants me, and that's enough for me. I now hold the dynamite in my hand, and weirdly, I'm not shaking and don't feel an ounce of fear. Physiologists say that endorphins produced in the brain in one's dying moments relieve pain as much as possible, but I call it God's mercy, and our opinions do not contradict. I have to light the fuse, but where's my lighter? I've forgotten where I put it when I ran out of cigarettes. Where is it? Ah, here it is. And now, light up, you stupid fuse. Oh, God, it's damp, but it should still light. Finally. And as the flames take hold, I take aim and throw it at him. And then you take cover. Don't forget, madam, to take cover. The explosion happened about 10 meters away from me, the sands blowing back in my face. But I was busy lighting the second fuse, and before the smoke settled, I had thrown the second stick of dynamite in the same direction as the first. And then you take cover. Don't forget, madam, to take cover. The second explosion lit the desert sky, turning night into day. And as the smoke cleared and the sandstorm settled, I found the assas still coming towards me, slowly and deliberately. Reaching for my gun, I dropped down, taking cover on the sand, and I pulled the trigger. Today I bring you a cheap, effective recipe for dispelling a vicious cave guard. 3 bullets penetrated that thing uselessly. This thing is like a fortress. I'm finished. But at least I won't die without forcing it to chase me for a while. So it can never be said I died like a sheep. Giving it my back, I start running. But it's behind me. I can feel and smell its breath. It's coming closer, and here I am stumbling and getting up and coughing. Once again, I realize my coronary arteries will fail me. The searing pain, the squeezing pain which starts in the left shoulder and crawls like a nightmare down my arm and into my pinky. My life wasn't so bad, but I had hoped to have a different death, a sweeter, more peaceful death than this. But suddenly, I became aware of a shift in the color of the sands. The surface of the sand was softer and more regular. The area was devoid of cacti, which reminded me of something. The surface of quicksand is more consistent and softer than the surrounding sand. So said Mahmoud one time. I knew what I had to do. I circumvented the area carefully, avoiding the suspicious-looking sand. A very dangerous task, as nature does not delineate the difference clearly. But I'm not afraid of anything. I'm no longer afraid. It's following me, and I want to find a spot outside the quicksand. And then if it tries to reach me, the sands will swallow it up. But I can't. I'm running on the edge of quicksand, that thing directly behind me, following in my footsteps. It will always live on the edge, just like me, and I have no chance to change directions. Turning my face, I see the thing for the first time, and monstrous horror attacks me. I have to confess. I must. I really can't focus on where my feet are landing right now. No, I won't scream, because screaming will only feed my panic when I realize the screams are my own, and... 1 second I was running, and the next I found myself 3 or 4 meters inside the area of quicksand. The sands shifted, drawing me down. I was drowning. And anyone who falls into these shifting sands must remember not to try to escape with frantic movements, which will only sink him in farther. Just try to float on your back, totally relaxed. I flipped onto my back, noticing the pale moon gazing down at me with sympathy. I felt my body swirling and then tilting backwards, then floating, slowly, slowly. I stretched my arms out, trying instinctively to widen the surface of my body and thereby lessen the pressure on the sand. It's actually working. And here I heard the sound of the assas coming for me. Here it is, taking its first steps into this quicksand. But it's mired in the sand, trying frantically to break free, throwing sand all around. But that fool knows nothing about surviving in quicksand. It doesn't know to try to relax. It's sinking, sinking, and the sand dances as it thrashes and shrieks, shaking the desert itself. But it's sinking, sinking. 2 meters from my body, it sinks and disappears entirely. And so you have survived, survived. The assas is finished. Yes, I'm sure of it. It's not a ghost. It's just an impenetrable monster, one that cannot escape its final prison. Just like me, it requires oxygen. The cave guard is finished and will never return. But I also have not escaped. And soon enough, the sand will cover me and I'll cease to exist. Even if I keep floating for an hour or two, what then? Mahmoud had advised us to wait for rescue. But what rescue? Screaming is futile. In the movies, the hero unties his belt, throws it neatly over a nearby tree branch, and starts crawling towards the shore. But I see nothing on which to throw my belt. Plus, how can I untie my belt without getting sucked down? Not to mention, I'm not wearing a belt. What a dilemma. Am I dreaming? Someone standing at the edge of the quicksand shouted frantically, "Don't move! I'll save you!" And in the moonlight, I saw his face. Kareem. Karim, the taboo man whose company I had left a day or so ago. I can't remember anymore, but how and when did he come back? And why? He threw something in my direction, and I caught it instinctively. A rope! A rope! And in a smooth and confident movement, he tied the rope to his camel and prodded the animal to start walking. And very slowly the camel started moving. I was being lifted, nearing the stable sand at the edge of this quicksand. I would survive. And just like that, I found myself collapsing on the sand, trembling and repeating meaningless words. As for Karim, that dear hero, he searched through his camel's saddlebag and brought out a canteen and water and some dates, offering them to me with a stern, expressionless face. No trace of kindness, or happiness, or arrogance. A face made of stone. So we can bring you back in another episode featuring another beast. The finale. Upon returning to the taboo's camp, I realized the men had not left us. They realized we were hopelessly lost, and so sent a group of 5 to bring us back against our will, even if it meant using their weapons. Our tracks were overlapping and intertwined, but they were smart enough to realize what had happened. And when they found the professor's body, and then Mahmoud's, they understood I was somewhere facing the Assas, alone. And when they heard the sound of the 2 explosions and the gunfire, they knew I was still alive near the quicksand. And so it went. Karim alone witnessed the events and knew the nightmare was finally over. And if it weren't for him... Nevertheless, he did not seem so optimistic about the cave guard's demise. In his clipped, emotionless way, he told me, "It will come back." "But," I protested, "it is a living being and can't..." "There are others," he said simply, while pointing at the sands beneath our feet. Truth be told, I had fallen in love with these men who were not about talking, but rather doing. Their intelligence and centuries-old wisdom exceeded my imagination. But what's down there? What secrets do the drawings on the Tassili cave walls hold? I'll never know unless I gather my courage and return to that last cave someday, to descend the staircase leading down to Atlantis? Maybe I'll do so someday, but I still believe the universe holds secrets better left untouched. I had lived difficult days and reached the edge of insanity, but that's all I knew, and I would never understand the universe. Those admirable men were smarter than the professor, and Mahmoud and Ahmed, and me, wiser and more courageous. Taking leave from the taboo was harsh, just many firm handshakes and then leaving and nothing more, for they are men not given to emotion. A difficult journey back to Tripoli awaited me, and another cruel memory took its rightful place on the shelves of my memory. I needed to relax. But I did not know, and how could I, that another surprise awaited me and that another strange experience would soon busy my thoughts for some time. But that's another story. Signed, Dr. Rifat Ismail, Cairo, Egypt, 1992.